I'm Paul Hoffschmidt, founder and CEO of Alpha Sophia, and this week I'm joined by Christian Espinosa, founder of Blue Goat Cyber. Thanks, Christian, for joining us today. Maybe we just start right in by hearing a little bit about your journey. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your company.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Paul. A little bit about myself. This is my second cybersecurity company. I built one that I started in 2014. I sold it in 2020 to a publicly traded company. With that company, we did some medical device cybersecurity, but it was not our focus. With this company, it's the focus. And I almost didn't start another company, but while I was working for that parent company, I felt kind of trapped and I had a bunch of issues going on in my life, and I developed 6 blood clots in my left leg and almost didn't survive. So thanks to a portable Doppler ultrasound device, it was able to quickly diagnose my blood clots, and I'm still here because of that device. So after I recovered from those blood clots and went through some depression because I was told I couldn't do anything I used to do. I couldn't run, I couldn't travel, I couldn't do Ironman triathlon. I basically just had to sit around and reflect on my life. But when I got out of that, I decided that starting a new company with a focus on medical device cybersecurity is what I should do, because I feel like if it wasn't for a medical device, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that personal story. And I can imagine that's a great motivator for you, helping your clients get in the best shape to launch their products safely to market and then ultimately benefit the patient they are targeting. Maybe to dive a little bit deeper into your current company, Blue Goat Cyber, which you were just sharing, you founded after your first exit. Cybersecurity for many people is probably a little bit opaque to understand what's actually meant with that, what's behind that. How would you explain to a layperson what Blue Goat Cyber is doing, how you're supporting medical device companies?
So we make sure a medical device, this could be a surgical robot, an implantable like a defibrillator, a drug infusion pump. We make sure those devices are secure from hackers. I mean, the last thing you want to have happen is a hacker or cyber criminal break into a drug infusion pump and increase the flow rate of something like morphine that your grandmother is on because of pain, and it could kill her. So we make sure those devices are secure. And we work with medical device manufacturers before these devices get on the market to make sure they meet all the cybersecurity requirements by the regulatory authority so they can be sold on the market, because there is a very regimented process to get a medical device on the market.
Yeah, I fully agree. And the example you made makes it quite clear why this is a key component in the pre-launch process of any medical device, making them cyber secure. You already touched on why you are now focusing on the healthcare sector, on the medical device sector, in relation to your personal story. Maybe one step back, how did you originally get involved in the cybersecurity industry?
I used to be in the U.S. military, and I did cybersecurity basically in the military. And then I did some work for Department of Homeland Security and several government agencies in the U.S. And then I just leveraged that experience and branched off into the commercial sector. So I've been doing some form or shape of cybersecurity for about 30 years now.
Yeah, that's good. And how would you say over those 30 years, is it, I mean, it's probably a rapidly changing industry. Are there things which have been coming up lately in the last couple of years, which are like the predominant threat to protect against, or is it a constant evolution of things and it's always changing? Or what's your perception on that threat landscape?
I think in one regard it hasn't really changed that much. It's actually very simple. If software developers would consider cybersecurity in the requirements and develop secure code, we would have 80% less data breaches or 80% less hacks. But I understand. I used to run a software development shop, and there's always pressure to get things out the door before it's fully tested. So I understand the dilemma. That's the old part of it, the thing that I'm hoping will change at some point, but I haven't seen it change very much over 30 years. The other aspect is things are becoming more and more connected. I think there's a few aspects about how cybersecurity has changed over 30 years. I think in one regard, it hasn't changed because one of the biggest problems in cybersecurity is software is developed without security in mind, and a lot of software developers do not understand cybersecurity. So in my experience of 30 years, that's shifted a little bit, but I would say like 5%. And that is still the biggest problem, because if code is developed without security in mind, it's going to have flaws when it comes out to in production. The thing that has shifted is there's a lot more connected systems now. Everything is connected. We have IoT devices, we have medical devices, and they're all connected via Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, and there's a cloud connection, a mobile component typically. So there's lots of ways an attacker can get into that system, because all those entry points have to be protected. And I would say the third thing that has changed is there's a move towards these things called cyber physical systems. This could be something like a surgical robot that's autonomous. We're pretty close to having fully autonomous surgical robots that are performing surgery on your spine without anybody involved. So imagine if somebody compromises that system. Where I live here in Phoenix, Arizona, we have autonomous driving cars. And I take them quite often, but I often think, well, what if somebody hacks in this car, causes it to speed up to 150 miles an hour and, run into a telephone pole? It could kill me, right? So, we have this reliance on this technology that is autonomous. And I hear in Dubai, they're going to have autonomous flying taxis pretty soon. So one of those things could crash into a building and kill people. So, there's a movement towards making sure these things are secure. It's much more important than just, your credit card information being stolen.
Yeah. And I mean, and I can imagine there's this natural conflict of every young company, every startup, and that's probably the same in MedTech, where, of course, everyone wants to get features out there quickly, wants to launch as fast as possible. And then, of course, that pressure also being exerted on the developers who are writing code. And then sometimes probably, I mean, the security aspect falls down a little bit under that pressure. And that's probably a little bit the balance which every development team in that space has to strike, right?
Yeah, there is that balance. And it's important that as soon as a company starts developing a product, they consider cybersecurity, because we've worked with some companies that did not consider cybersecurity to the very end, and they made design decisions to use a specific microcontroller, for instance, that did not support secure boot, basically, which is a requirement by the FDA in the United States. So they had to remove a bunch of features from their device to get it to the market because of a design decision made a couple years ago, before they finally got this product done.
What would you say, having worked with many founders or development teams in the medical device space, what are the top three most common pitfalls those companies fall in, where they have to do a lot of work again in order to be cybersecurity compliant?
I think the top three common pitfalls, number one, is not considering cybersecurity at the beginning, not considering it as part of the requirements. I realize cybersecurity is non-functional requirements, but it should be considered as part of the design stage and part of the requirements. So I would say that's the first thing. The second thing is not doing iterative testing from a cybersecurity perspective. A lot of people wait to the very end and then have a penetration test done or static application security testing. That can be done early on to identify problems, so it's much easier to fix things sooner than later when you have, we've had a client that had like 6,000 findings, and it's hard to fix 6,000 things. If they would have reached out to us sooner when they first started developing it, we maybe could have told them, here's a common problem we're seeing. If you fix this and then fix this later on, and we won't have 6,000 findings at the end. And the final thing is, once a product is on the market, you still have to monitor it for vulnerabilities. I think a lot of clients think, if we got it to the market, we're good to go. But now post-market management is becoming extremely important, and making sure that device stays secure, because vulnerabilities are constantly uncovered every day. It could be a vulnerability in a third-party library you're using in your code. It could be a vulnerability for your device. It could be a Bluetooth vulnerability. It doesn't matter. But we have to continuously monitor our devices and make sure that when there's a new vulnerability, we have a means to address it on our device that's already fielded in the market.
Okay, med device folks, picture this. What if you could open up a CRM today and it already contained information for every potential lead for you in the country? And you could narrow down those leads further by looking at billing, location, seniority, so much more. Alpha Sophia is the strategy tool that we wish we had had when we were commercializing a medical device in the US market. But there's nothing stopping you. So visit alphasophia.com and learn more.
What are typical clients you work with in terms of stage and size? Is it usually really early on, or do you also start working with large organizations?
We work with both. We work with a lot of startups that it's often just the CEO and a CTO and some developers working on a product. We work with them, and they're relatively easy to work with often, but they have their same challenges. And we have some large clients that have a suite of products. So we work with both. And from our experience, from a maturity perspective, the large clients aren't necessarily more mature than these small startups from a cybersecurity perspective. In some regard, they actually have all these procedures that are antiquated from a software development perspective, which the startup doesn't have those because they haven't developed anything yet. So it's, I wouldn't, when I first started working in this industry, I thought, well, maybe these larger companies are mature from a cybersecurity perspective, but it's been an eye-opening for me to realize that they're not that mature actually.
Yeah, that's interesting. That those levels of immaturity exist along different sizes of companies, and it's probably also like a development cultural thing, whether cybersecurity is embedded in that development culture straight from the start, or it's something that is only exerted on the company culture later on. So going back to your point previously, where you say the most important thing is to start early and not build up a long list of open to-dos on that front.
Right.
In terms of your services, how do typical projects look like? Do you testing, or do you train the development personnel? How does it work?
It's a little bit of both of that. We offer full service cybersecurity services, so we will do everything required from a cybersecurity perspective. We work with the manufacturer, we partner with them. So this includes all the documentation, the risk assessment, the software bill of materials, all testing. We do all of that. If they've already done some of those items, then we can pare that down. And we really have a collaborative approach. So we'll work with them. If we test something, we'll tell them what we found and how to fix it. And often they don't quite understand how to fix it. So we'll work with them to get them to understand the right way to fix it. Then we'll do a retest to validate it worked. And we also try to work with companies early on. Unfortunately, most companies come to us with like 2-month window before they want to start, submitting the product to the FDA or MDR. Some companies come to us early on, like I mentioned about the design decisions. If they come to us early on, we work with them more of a consultancy role to help consult on design decisions, to help refine the cybersecurity requirements and how to design cybersecurity into the system. That is ideal, because then when we get to the submission portion later on, we already know it's been designed securely. And the regulatory authorities are really pushing for secure software development and proof of that.
You were mentioning the FDA and the MDR in Europe in what you're saying. Do you see any kinds of differences in both regulatory bodies? Are there differences in requirements, and how do they differ if they do?
They're very similar. I think the FDA is one of the more stringent requirements and have kind of led the charge as far as making sure devices are secure from a cybersecurity perspective. The MDR is very similar. So our approach is to do our due diligence and make sure the device is secure and meets all the if it's secure and we have all the documentation, it's good for pretty much any regulatory authority. It's just some of the authorities want a little bit different labeling for the documentation, but we do that anyway. Because from my perspective, I want to make sure the device is secure. And we had one manufacturer actually kind of trick us and sound like they fixed something, but they really didn't. So I can't approve that device or sign off on it, because if one of these devices that my company's worked on is hacked later on and somebody dies, it obviously doesn't feel good to me and it doesn't look good for my company.
In terms of the way you work with them, you mentioned you partner with your clients. So it's not a they work on something, then they hand it over and you do checking, but it's like a constant process you work with your clients, I assume, right?
It's a constant process, and we have a fixed fee, so we don't do time and materials. We do a fixed fee, and we are basically, if we do pre-market work with a client, we're their partner until their device gets approved. If there is a deficiency related to cybersecurity, we'll address that free of charge. We haven't had any yet, but that is part of our guarantee as well. So we're become their partner until the device is approved, and then we also offer post-market management services. So if they want us to help them or do the post-market management for them, we can do that as well.
Yeah. So that would have been my next question. Yeah. So you basically then also accompany the company going on to have like post-market launch quality checks from a cybersecurity perspective. Are there any larger trends you're currently seeing in cybersecurity, which are currently there? You already mentioned over the last couple of years on the rise of Internet of Things, of connected devices, everything is connected. But are there any things when you're looking to the future, which are going to be, the main trends in MedTech in conjunction with cybersecurity?
Yeah, there's a push for AI. Obviously, we deal with a lot of AI enabled software as a medical device, which a lot of it takes like an MRI or ultrasound and enhances the imaging, for instance, using AI technology. So with AI, one of the challenges is if the model is trying to learn and it's learning from garbage, the output of the AI is going to be garbage. So you have to be very careful about what information you feed the AI and how you contain that. And that's one of the threats we look at when we look at AI-enabled software.
Yeah, and how do you actually do that? I mean, it's quite hard are you then checking the training data or doing diligence on the training data, or what's the process behind that?
Yeah, we have to check the training data to make sure it's accurate data, and then their mechanism for using more data later on and where they're getting the data, what the source is. Because, one of the attacks, obviously, with AI is to, like I said, feed bogus data to the model, and it learns the wrong stuff and it behaves the wrong way. And this is obviously really important if this is something like a surgical robot.
Yeah, I fully agree. And then, also going forward, then it's not only the training data, but also the continuous training data. Once the product is launched, most of those devices have something built in where they continue to learn in the field from further data points being gathered by the devices in the field. And then understanding from your answer that then also works towards setting standards about which kinds of data sources in the future are allowed to be used for continuous training of the device, right?
100%. Yep.
How is it? We've talked about physical devices a lot and them being connected maybe to some sort of software layer. Are you also engaged in software as a medical device products? Is that something you see increasing in numbers?
Yeah, we work with SAMDs, software as a medical device, very often. And some of these are very novel devices. Like I said, a lot of them are AI-enabled software as a medical device that do image enhancement. Some of them help with predictions for cancer and other things, given some data fed into it. So we work with quite a few of those. And we also work with a lot of novel devices, which are, I think, really helping the industry move forward. Like one of our clients has a product that basically can take blood and dehydrate it, turn it into powder, and then reconstitute it. So it solves the whole blood storage and blood transport issue.
Very interesting. Maybe to look into the future, one last closing question, Christian. What's going to be your main focus with Blue Goat Cyber over the course of the next couple of months and years?
My main focus is brand awareness. I feel like we have a couple competitors in this space, and I'd like to become the market leader in this space. So this year, I feel like we can do that, given our reputation, our years of experience, our process, our happy clients. The focus is really that brand awareness because, like I mentioned earlier, I had a company before, and this company is relatively new. It's been around 3 years. So right now, going to conferences, speaking at conferences, doing podcasts such as this one, and anything we can do to increase the brand awareness.
Thank you, Christian. It was a pleasure having you on the pod, and excited to see your journey over the course of the year. And we wish you the best of luck. And I believe, as you mentioned in the beginning, I fully agree. I mean, starting early with topics like cybersecurity or any kind of quality assurance when developing medical devices is just key to not have a bad awakening very late in the funnel just before market launch, and then you have to do night shifts and try to fix things which you could have done right if you had started from the beginning. So thank you very much for your insights today. It was a pleasure having you on the pod.
Yeah, thanks so much, Paul.
Simple question. Can you afford to have a rep in every county, or do you need to be hyper-targeted in your outreach? Do you need to know information about your targets going in to be successful, or do you have years and years before you want to close that deal? If you want to be focused, if you want to deliver fast, you should visit alphasophia.com and help your sales team out.